in the modern context for India, all our ministries, government ministries, should also be mapped according to the element. We have a ministry of Jal Shakti. Why not a ministry of soil? Why not a ministry of energy, which is fire? Why not a ministry of air and space and so on? Create the perfect system that we need, which is based on the Indian knowledge systems. I have written a paper actually on how the moon should be declared as a living entity. Moon and extraterrestrial objects should be only used for exploration purposes, not to use the moon as a colony. Don't exploit resources, but use resources wisely. 300 million cattle we are killing every single year. What if we took an approach which our Indian knowledge systems have taught us to respect them? Only bring the excess milk or use the excess milk after the calf is completely fed. India can set an example for the world that we are the only country that are addressing all the 5 elements of this earth.
Welcome to another sit-down session to Sangam Talks, and we have with us respected Ramprasad ji from USA. Thank you for joining us, sir. So, good evening. Today's talk is an elementary strategy for India towards an Atma Bhumi Nirbhar Bharat. I repeat, not Atma Nirbhar Bharat, but Atma Bhumi Nirbhar Bharat. Ramprasad ji will explain it later. Ramprasad ji will focus on creating a prosperous India by focusing on Pancha Mahabhutas. Ramji authored 2 books and published several articles on sustainability. He worked as a global marketer for a major multinational company in the US. He holds degrees from Madras University and Yale University, USA. While I offer short introduction, no one can express Ramji's journey better than he can. I would like to invite him to share a bit more about his background and the path that led him to this important work and begin his talk. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Debasis, and namaste to everybody. So as Debasis mentioned, my talk is about an elemental strategy for India and how to really create and how can we take India towards an Atma Bhumi Nirbhar Bharat. The word Bhumi in Atma Nirbhar Bharat has been very intentionally chosen, and I'll explain why. The reason for that is our earth and all life on earth is composed of the 5 different foundational elements, which is soil, water, fire, air, and space. And in that sequence, if you actually see, that sequence is important. I'll explain why. But all of these elements, we need to restore these elements. We need to heal those elements. We need to nurture those elements because of the fact that if you look at the planetary boundaries, which the scientist like Johann Rockström has explained, there are 9 planetary boundaries. 6 of them have already been breached. They are out of the safe zone. So if the remaining 3 are also out of the safe zone, then God help sending another Noah's Ark to us. So we have to be very mindful. So that is what Atma Bhumi Nirbhar Bharat means. It means that our self-reliance has to be rooted in the 5 foundational elements in order to achieve true prosperity for India or even for the world. So while I will be using India as an example, this template can apply to anybody in the world. So that is how we are going to address these elements. And all of these elements, as you already know with the different talks, all of these elements have been degraded. And we need to focus on those elements so that the planetary boundaries, whether it is climate change, whether it is biodiversity loss, freshwater use, our oceans, everything has to be restored and they are out of the safe zone. So I would like to bring forth the Indian knowledge systems here in order to explain what I mean. So if you look at soil, water, fire, air, and space, they exactly correspond or map even to the chakras in our human body, starting from the bottom, soil, and then going upwards, water, and so on. And obviously, once you reach space, which is on the throat chakra, and if you look at the other two elements, which are beyond the material phenomena, the Ajna chakra as well as the chakra in the crown, so they're beyond material elements. So we need to focus and we need to nurture these elements, because otherwise we cannot fix planet Earth, or in the human evolutionary process, we even cannot fix ourselves. So the macrocosm and the microcosm are deeply interlinked and they are deeply connected. And there is a lot of symbolism in the chakras. For example, if you take the element, the Swadhisthana chakra, which corresponds to the water element of the earth, you see the symbol with the crescent moon, right, inside a lotus. What does it actually mean? It actually means how much the moon also has influence on the tidal waves, on the sap flow within a plant. Every fluid content is being influenced by the space element, which is the moon. So we have to be mindful, we have to be careful. When I get into these elements, I will show you what these interrelationships are and what they mean and how sustainability happens. Even if you take the chakras and map it to the fingers on your palm, they correspond exactly like that. So bottom line is, soil is the most important because it starts from the bottom, then water, and then so on. So the sequencing is very important. That's how we need to focus. What does this mean in the modern context for India? All our ministries, government ministries, should also be mapped according to the element. We have a ministry of Jal Shakti. Why not a ministry of soil? Why not a ministry of energy, which is fire? Why not a ministry of air and space and so on? So even if our society is structured along these lines, like even education along these lines, they all can work with each other very collaboratively and create the perfect system that we need, which is based on the Indian knowledge systems and applied in the modern context. So that is the point I'm trying to make. Even if we go to the Conference of Parties internationally, why couldn't we have an agenda structured around the elements instead of focusing just on targets? Then we know what we need to do. I published a paper on what is called as an environmental health index, which is like a counterweight to the GDP. Just measuring GDP just shows haphazard progress. It measures the good and the bad. But an environmental health index, which is a composite of measuring each element. If you measure each element properly, and one of my paper in earth.org discusses that, then you will have a perfect environmental health index, which shows you a composite measure of how we are managing the earth. The bottom line, as we have learned in any corporation, you only manage what you measure. So if you don't measure that, how can you manage properly? You go to a doctor, he takes your blood report and he tells you how you're doing in terms of all the elements. And that is exactly the logic. You cannot just ask somebody's income. You need to ask how is their health. Without proper health, you cannot manage anything. So with that said, and as I said, I will focus first on the soil element because the soil element is most important. Now, when we talk about the soil element, I will focus on two different areas on soil, which is agriculture and degraded land. Okay. So soil is the second biggest carbon sink on earth right after water. 1/3 of the landmass, approximately that. And also trees grow on the soil. The trees capture the carbon dioxide and the soils actually store the carbon dioxide. And these are all living entities. Soil is a living entity. There are so many microbes in the soil. That is what keeps the soil alive. And we need to nurture and respect that. So with agriculture, what I want to focus on is basically, if you look at agriculture, 50% of the habitable land in the world is devoted to agriculture, right? And 77% of that 50% is all animal agriculture. So which is basically raising livestock. So when we talk about livestock, I want to focus on cattle. Let's focus on cattle because that is the major component, right? So what happens with cattle? 8 billion people in the world, and annually, if you look at the globe, 300 million cattle are being slaughtered every single year. Why is that happening? If you look at the life cycle of cattle, basically, you raise them for dairy production, for milk and all that. And a calf grows into a cow in 18 months. And in its, after 3-4 years, the calf, you start impregnating it, and then you start producing more calves. And that is how you increase the production. And what happens is, in 6 to 7 years, when that life of that cow is over, or the water buffalo in India is over, then goes to the slaughterhouse. Then it becomes burger in somebody's plate or whatever. So that is why we are producing so much cattle, right? So we have to question, okay, the dairy industry itself, it starts from there. What is really happening? Let us look at the history of cattle, right? We used to have 6 trillion trees in the world before actual large-scale farming started. Today, we have only 3 trillion trees. So Dr. Sailesh Rao, who's the founder of Climate Healers, and you can go into his website, he has written a beautiful position paper and peer-reviewed paper. He's from Stanford. He was a systems engineer who became an environmentalist. And in his peer-reviewed paper, he shows that 87% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the world are actually accounted because of animal agriculture, much more than fossil fuels. So he thinks that is the killing machine, and the burning machine is the fossil fuels. Now let us come to that. So let us understand where he is coming from. So how his methodology, you can go into his methodology in the position paper. I will not go there. But basically, Goodland and Anhang, they also published a paper in 2009. They feel that animal agriculture is accounting for 51% of the greenhouse gas emissions, right? That is a high number too. So who is right? Is the international organization saying about 14 to 18%? Are they right? Or is Dr. Sailesh Rao and Goodland and Anhang right? So these numbers are being challenged, and there is a reason for that. Probably, I think I tend to agree with them. So if you look at the daily life cycle, what happens is historically, 5,000 years, about 5,000 years ago, when agriculture really started or dairy farming started, human beings started drinking milk. But every single mammal on earth drinks milk only till infancy. After that, they don't drink milk. What happens is, even for humans, the ability to break down the lactose enzyme has disappeared. But humans evolved, so they had the genetic mutation to still break down the lactase. That is why you have so many lactose intolerant people in the world, because they did not develop that genetic mutation. So was it natural for us to drink milk? I'm not so sure. Now look at the science. Roman gladiators who were so strong, they never drank milk. They lived on a complete plant-based diet, and yet they were so strong. So you should do some research on why they were strong and what kind of plant-based milk they were using. I mean, look at moringa, for instance. It has 4 times as much calcium as milk or even oranges. So it's not true that plant-based milk or any plant-related matter plant-related diet is not good for you. Even the scientific evidence shows actually vegans have a better health profile than even vegetarians or non-vegetarians. So now let's look at even dairy, for example, because that's where the problem is starting, from an ahimsa or a sattvic perspective. From ahimsa perspective, is it right to impregnate all the cattle and then send them eventually to the slaughterhouses, doing this kind of a mass factory production and confining them? In the Western countries like US and China, they even feed them with meat residues. Not so in India, obviously. But still, the overall practices are not so conducive from an animal cruelty standpoint, that is ahimsa. From a sattvic standpoint, our traditional seers have told us that you can only drink milk after the cow has been completely fed, and also the cow should be free range. It has to have its freedom in grazing the grass and so on. So you cannot take its milk after the calf is fully fed. I don't think those practices happen anymore. So we have to be mindful of all of these things and what we are doing to the animals. So rightfully so, people are questioning these practices. For example, Sailesh Rao questions, if a calf can become a cow in 18 months, I don't know whether that is good or not for me. So I would like you to look into those papers and question yourself. I'm not saying drink milk or don't drink milk. What I'm only trying to point out, there is a major factor contributing to global greenhouse gases because of animal agriculture as a whole. And we need to do that research, and we need to be mindful and look at our own Indian traditional systems. Next, I'm going to talk about basically about degraded land. In India, 30% of the land is degraded, and other land to varying degrees also. India follows the same phenomena as what is happening in the world, because of chemical agriculture and so on. A lot of our land is degraded. But there are ways to restore these lands, to bring health back into these lands. In everything I'm saying, there is a challenge, but it opens a lot more opportunities for startups to go plant-based, right? And that is where I'm focusing on. And that is how we make India prosperous. For example, even on degraded land, a lot of information is also available on Sangam Talks, where they talk about Vedic agriculture, they talk about Vriksha Ayurveda, they talk about cosmic agriculture, which is basically aligning or grouping even plants based upon their astrological traits so that the pest control is reduced. And with the lunar rhythms, are we following all these traditional practices? What about homotherapy in agriculture? There are just so many things, and there are just a few examples in India, like Athachi farms in Kerala, or other kind of botanical sanctuaries in Kerala, many more, or sadhana forests in Araval, that are following some of these practices. So we can revive our soils. Soils need 3 to 5% organic matter in them. Organic agriculture is more related to less chemical inputs, but we go beyond that in Indian traditional knowledge systems. I would like you to listen to Dr. Prabhakar Rao. He is on YouTube. He has given many talks, excellent speaker, and you can gain a lot of knowledge in these areas. So these are some of the highlights on soil.
So thank you for that presentation, sir, on soil. I just remember one thing. Couple of years back, in our neighboring country, Sri Lanka, they adopted one thing, that is organic agriculture. You talked about Vedic knowledge systems of agriculture, but it's bounced back very badly. There are a couple of other aspects also, but majorly for that, government policy, their economy just crashed. So, what do you think about that? What happened there? is organic agriculture is a different term for the same regular process we are using for agriculture?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Debasis. I think as I was writing my articles, I was researching on some of these things. For example, I looked at Sikkim. Sikkim is a success story on organic agriculture. So I'll come to Sri Lanka after addressing Sikkim, because it's important to understand that. Why was Sikkim a success and Sri Lanka a failure? Sikkim was a success because they took 10 to 13 years actually for organic agriculture to flourish in their country. And they were very, very planned, very systematic, lot of training for the farmers. And they actually started with horticulture, which is fruit-bearing, vegetable-bearing plants, because it's much easier to adopt organic agriculture there with less chemical inputs and so on. Very, very phased manner, very planned manner, lot of training, and that is why they achieved success. Why did Sri Lanka fail? Sri Lanka failed because of the fact in 2021, what happened is the government decided overnight, banned the import of fertilizer overnight. No training to the farmers, no proper announcement to the farmers. Flick of a button, you go organic. And Sri Lanka is a country where you are dependent on rice export and tea export, that economy. So what did you do? You adopted organic agriculture for rice growing as opposed to a phased manner for horticultural related plants, and then slowly kind of switching. So that is why in a few months you saw 20 to 30% production downfall in the rice field in Sri Lanka. So they never planned it well. So that's the bottom line. So even when I talk about milk and other things, people have to implement practical changes, go in a phased manner. Whatever you want to do, go in a very systematic and a phased manner. Don't overnight switch to something, because you will be disappointed, right? So thank you again. That was a very good question. But now I'm going to transition to water, which is another big element that is the biggest carbon sink on Earth. Now, when I focus on water, I'm going to talk about 4 things related to water. The first thing actually I want to talk about water is wastewater, right? And the second thing I will focus on is agriculture related, textiles, and then desalination. So first, let us focus on wastewater, right? What are we doing with wastewater? We are shipping out 75 billion liters per day into our oceans. Only about 1/3 of that water is treated water, right? The balance of the water is all of that wastewater is being shunted out to the oceans. Now, if you look at the global average, 50% of the wastewater is actually treated and 50% goes to the ocean. So the marine life is being impacted in a big way, when wastewater could actually be treated so well. And I'll tell you the opportunities in wastewater. How do you actually treat wastewater? So wastewater treatment plants in India are called as sewage treatment plants. Then you have also some decentralized wastewater treatment plants as well. As I said, close to 1/3 is being treated, right? But why do we want to call sewage treatment plants as sewage treatment plants? Why couldn't we call them as resource recovery plants? You see, the mindset changes immediately. If I meet someone, he is very shy to tell me he's a sewage treatment plant operator. But if I tell me, hey, you're working in the resource recovery plant, the mindset changes immediately to entrepreneurship. Then he starts thinking, oh, wow, I work in a resource recovery plant. Let me see how I can make all these resources from wastewater to biofuels, biogas, biofertilizer. How can I even generate electricity from wastewater? So Nikhil Malwankar, who is at the Yale University Yale University. He has opened what is called as the Malvankar Labs. You can look at it. I mean, Indians are doing incredible work and we should be proud of them. He's trying to see how we can generate electricity from all of these organic compounds by using microbes in the wastewater. And this is a golden opportunity for us to have more decentralized wastewater treatment plants, increase the entrepreneurship in India, privatize them, and change the name so that people are really believing in Atma Bhumi Nirbhar Bharat. They are taking care of the elements. If you go with the mindset of Atma Nirbhar Bharat, you're only dealing with self-reliance and not relating it to the elements. Now, let me talk about agriculture. Agriculture, I have written a paper called How India's Agriculture Can Save 200 billion cubic meters of water. You heard that right, 200 billion cubic meters of water. That is almost 1/6 of the total water produced in India. How do you save that in agriculture? Yeah, there are many efficient practices you can do. And I will leave it to a lot of the agricultural universities. They have published a lot of things on that. But where I will focus on is some policy measures we can take. For example, rice. Rice uses a lot of water, 3,000 to 5,000 liters of water to produce a kilogram of rice. So what you can actually do is, what if you were to switch to brown rice, right? It is good for your health also. What if you switch to millets? You will be using 1/10 of that water, right? Plus, you will grow them faster also compared to a rice crop. And when you talk about millets, there is a person called Dr. Khadar Wali in India. He returned from the United States as a scientist, and he's now called the Millet Man of India because he's promoting millet so much because it's so good for your health also. There are a number of talks on millets. We call it the year of the millet, but we don't do anything to really even do something about it. I mean, even if you look at wheat or sugarcane, everything you are using so much water. Even if you make a small transition from white rice to brown rice, with little brown rice, almost half of the white rice, you can save more water, right? Because you're not eating so much of the brown rice because it fills your stomach more quickly. So many strategies you can implement to save water. And I have written all of this in my article, whether it is even coffee, right? Coffee now, Finland is growing coffee in a lab. And they have given a testing to the people. They cannot differentiate between real coffee or lab-grown coffee also. And you can save our mountains, our hills. You can definitely do a lot of things. These are all modern dietary things which have become a fad and which have come into place, but they're really harming the planet as well. Now I can talk about textiles. For example, in the textile industry, there are so many inventions that you could do. For example, cotton. Take cotton, right? It consumes a lot of water. You can grow cotton in a lab now. Galley, which is a startup in the USA, it grows cotton 10 times faster in the lab compared to even on the field. It's a commercial crop. It's not even like a food or anything. It requires 80% less water, 90% less land, grows almost 10 times faster in the lab. And we are using millions of hectares of land for growing cotton also. We can do something about it. Even, for example, all the textiles which we wash, right? We are using so much water. What we can do is, in the United States, you have a liquid CO2 machine. Liquid CO2, same machine, CO2 at high temperature becomes liquid, and then low temperature becomes gas. So the same machine can actually wash your clothes. What if somebody starts a huge chain, have laundromats which run on liquid CO2, then you can, every 50 households, you can have a liquid CO2 machine. Why are IITs not focusing on this? They should probably focus on this and invent a machine in India So entrepreneurship increases, green technology increases, you save so much water, even restaurants can wash their dishes. So just ample opportunities here in terms of what we can do and what we cannot do. You can have almost full employment in India by implementing some of these practices. I will even talk about water and desalination plants. Desalination plants are very old technology. There is a lot of brine which is associated, and it is environmentally not good. And I have written an article on this. Why not use old cruise ships, install wind turbines on the cruise ship, and what you do is basically integrate a system invented by Dr. Praveen Kumar in the United States, where basically what you can do is, if you have these wind turbines on old cruise ships, throwaway cruise ships, you can basically not only generate energy, but you can use these turbines to capture the water. Water vapor over the ocean is a lot. You can capture that water and make it into fresh water. And Dr. Praveen Kumar has written, not exactly to my idea of what you do on a cruise ship, but he shows atmospheric water capture, how we can kind of do that. Because there is so much water vapor over the ocean, you can do all of these things.
On your individual capacity, you have researched and you have poured your time into this, and you have gave many solutions on that matter. But still, I mean, in today's India always been a land of opulence, but still India is a vast area, vast land. So there, historically, people opt for millets in different parts of India, even all over India. But nowadays, what we can see in today's consumerism market, that millets became the, in packaged food, millets became the food for the rich people because it's became too high, very costly. So, so how can we, in India's perspective, the choice of consuming millet, we can do you have any roadmap for that, how we can promote that consumption of millet in India or maybe in the whole world?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's a great question. That's a great question. So what I would like you to do is, Dr. Khadar Wali has, if you go onto his website, Dr. Khadar Wali's website, or if you look at some of his talks, he has a lot of ideas on millets itself. How to make it your staple food. Number one, it is so much more healthy because it is using 10 times less water, right? Compared to your other crops, whether it is rice, which also is more methane generating, we'll kind of get there. And compared to any other crop, and they are growing a little bit faster than even the rice crop. So millets have a lot of health benefits as well. I mean, why don't we take the poor man's food and make it an everyday food and reduce the carbon footprint? There are a lot more opportunities with millets that I think you should go into some of his lectures and websites and look into that.
So it's become expensive because there are not a lot of millets are producing.
Yeah, I mean, this is something India needs to work on. If it wants to save its water, this is something we definitely need to save on. It is green. I mean, it is so healthy. So from all angles, the health benefits are great. The climate benefits are great. I mean, if you theoretically look at it, those which are environmentally most impacting to the environment, they're not even suitable for our health. So if you look at it from a holistic standpoint, we need to put much more emphasis on millets, not only because of lower water consumption, and this is where my article discusses, and you can look at it in Sustainability Next, is how we can actually save 200 billion gallons of water. I mean, it's a lot of water we can save. 1/5 of India's water we can save if we adopt some of these healthy strategies.
As you mentioned, rightfully, mentioned that government intervention is very profoundly needed in this case, because the farmers, like the farmers of Uttar Pradesh, they are producing surplus sugarcane. And sugarcane, I think you will agree that need a lot of water than millets. So if we can educate those farmers, they can produce millets as well. Then there will be a surplus on millets as well, and it will less costly for the people.
Yeah, I mean, right now there are companies even producing honey, lab-grown honey, right? And it is being marketed by Narayan Foods in, I think, a Sri Lanka-based company. There are 75,000 retail outlets in Europe, lab-grown honey. So there are many, many alternatives, a lot of entrepreneurial alternatives, and I've written articles on this. People can check it out. But there are several alternatives for sugar as well that we can actually do. But that's a different topic all by itself. Yeah.
Right, sir. Please carry on.
Yeah, thank you. So let me talk about fire. The next element is the fire element, which I would like to talk about, which is basically relates to the energy element, right? So when we look at the energy element, I have actually written a paper on this, on how India needs to have a planet-centric energy strategy for India, right? Because if you look at the current energy strategy, it's all so much really fossil fuel based and things like that. So whenever energy is very, very capital intensive, that's or extractive from the earth, that creates a red flag. And there are other things. So it should not be so much of a centralized structure, because the more decentralized you can make energy, the better it is, right? So obviously we all know about, there are now, for example, in the Indian context, there are these little wind turbines, right? They are very planet-friendly turbines, which basically these wind turbines, everybody can install on their rooftop 24/7, unlike even solar energy. And they don't kill any birds or anything because the turbine is made in such a way. And many, many companies are making these wind turbines. They are portable. They can be installed on your rooftops. You can power your own home with these. Just in energy alone, there is a vast amount of savings you can do. And even, for example, there is an Israeli company called Home Biogas. Just with your organic material, you can create your own biogas and things like that. Many, many companies are out there. Many technologies are out there on the fire element, as we talk about. So all of these clean technologies. So as you transition from centralized structures to more decentralized structures, the opportunity opens up. And everybody knows about solar and things like that. But you need to have all kinds of decentralized systems. That should be the strategy we need to take so that India can prosper. Give the power in the hands of the people. give more entrepreneurship, and that will create a lot more things in the fire element or the fire energy that I'm talking about. So many options are there, and we need to harness all of these technology. The more you look at centralized systems, there would be more and more issues and more problems. You had a question, Debasis, on this?
Yes, sir. As our respected Prime Minister also promote the use of millet, he also promotes the solar energy, and the largest state in our country, Uttar Pradesh, is implementing this stuff, and we also gifted solar power processes to UN as well. So apart from that, there are many sources, as you mentioned. What is your view on hydrogen as a future energy source for India?
That's a very good question. So let me address 2 or 3 different things which you had asked for. So I'll come to the question of hydrogen, creating a hydrogen economy itself, and all of those things. But basically, one of the things I would like to address also is we have a lot of dams, right, in India. We have to ask ourselves also, is dam technology good or bad? Because once you start obstructing the river flows with mega dams and all that, is it the right thing? I mean, if you look at the natural systems of the river flow and changing all those rivers and everything like that, is that right? The more blocks so you look at a human being, how does the blood flow? When you start obstructing it, is that good or bad? We are a microcosm of the macrocosm, the earth. So whatever happens in our body is also happening in our earth, right? All the Pancha Mahabhutas are there in both the systems. So creating all these dams and everything like that, you're obstructing the water flow. There are new technologies called as blue wave energy, where you harness the energy before fresh water enters seawater. You have a membrane, right? And you tap the energy, the different energy forms in the fresh water and the seawater through this membrane, which separates that. You tap the energy and you create much more energy by the chemical and the ionic differences between fresh and seawater. Blue wave energy, all this technology exists, but we are not even harnessing that. We are still stuck in some of the old technologies that we have. So coming to your aspect of other power, like the hydrogen power and things of that nature, I mean, even if you look at, when you start breaking up these molecules, it's highly capital intensive. The other thing that happens is hydrogen leakage. When that happens, what is happening in the atmosphere, you have to ask yourself. So there was a paper actually written by, which was a very incredible paper, because what happens is when you start becoming very capital intensive, then you're breaking down some of the molecules in the air and so on. So overall, you have to look at technologies and figure out what is good for the earth and what is not good for the earth, and you have to address them in this manner. So that's what I would say is look at all of the things holistically, whether it is water, dams, and so on. You have to look at all of these things. So that's what I would say right now. So the next thing I want to go is into the air element. And if you look at the air element, what we are actually trying to do, you have to see, okay, we have a lot of traffic in India, right? I mean, there is just so much traffic going on in India, and there is a lot of pollution. Um, we are spewing a lot of gases into the air, and all these pollutants which we are putting into the air is not generally good. Obviously, we are talking about so many things. Why not come out with a model in India to have clean air, so that, whether it is Uber, whether it is Ola, or anything of those transportation companies, and if we look at our GST structure and so on, basically, you give them a complete tax incentive for running those cars. But if you are talking about private cars, you increase your GST to the highest slab in terms of when you have a private car ownership. So it's the highest GST on private car ownership. But for public transport like Ola and things like that, they should not be zero tax at all, completely zero tax. So that what you do is you're encouraging more and more public transport and reducing and minimizing, so you control the air pollution that is actually happening. I've written a paper on that, on making such things kind of happen, and it is very important that we kind of look into these tax structures and things like that. How do you fashion even our GST system to take care of the environment? For example, when you are thinking about the lower tax structure, the 0% or 5%, all of the clean technologies should be in that tax structure, including like healthier foods like millets and things of the nature. But when you're talking about those which are harmful to the environment, you put it in the highest tax structure. So that way you manage the economy. No other country in the world has currently 4-tiered kind of a GST system, which anybody in the world should actually adopt. And that works very well with India. India should actually export such a model. Put the environmentally damaging goods on the highest tax tier, and the environmentally promoting goods in the lowest tax tier. It makes a lot of sense to kind of do those things and even manage our extreme traffic situation, promote more of the public transport systems and all of that, whether it is auto rickshaws to public cars and things like that. You can just do and clean our air in a very decentralized manner.
Well, India, maybe if you agree that India in the current government, in this government, there are lots and lots and cities and towns are being laid with metro railroad. So maybe India in that way promoting the public transport. But living in Delhi, I can say that Delhians are more akin to using private transport, private cars and all. Apart from that, sir, in today's time, India may be the second highest in the world in consuming data in worldwide internet system. So they have a lot used to access to internet. So in that case, do you can you recommend few websites where people can learn and the awareness will spread more in that way to how to curb that air pollution and the air quality values, how we can hit on that?
Sure. For example, I can tell you, even in the case of agriculture, right? People can go into the website and look at Dr. Ulrich Burke, Ulrich, and Ulrich Burke. He has a website on homotherapy and things like that, where it is being applied in agriculture, homotherapy, being applied to clean the air. being applied for so many things with wonderful and remarkable results. People do it in their homes and all that. There is a lot of traditional knowledge here that people need to leverage as individuals, as agriculturists, and things of that nature. So you can go into Ulrich Berg's website and see there are a lot more things that can be done in this area. There are a lot of traditional and ancient knowledge systems which we are not trying to leverage as much as we should in this world. For example, there is even a website called Vedic Shrijan. Vedic Shrijan, that particular website also shows how even water bodies in India can be completely cured. So it's not just we are talking about air pollution. I mean, even water bodies, there is so much ancient knowledge in India that we need to harness and leverage this knowledge, whether it is homotherapy or whether it is Vedic agriculture and so on. Not a lot of knowledge sitting in India itself that needs to be leveraged.
Thank you, sir. Please carry on.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to discuss about is the space element. If you look at the space element, and here is where I was kind of talking about. So even if you look at all our chakras, right? So for example, if you look at the chakra actually related to, so we start with soil, right? And then we go with the water element and so on. So if you look at one of the chakras with a moon in the chakra, right? And I think that is the second chakra which you actually see. So the moon has so much influence on the earth, right? Whether it is the growth of the plants, which happens in the night, the water flows in the plant that happens, the sap flow which happens, the tidal waves happen, everything relates. This is all related to space. So our chakra diagrams, when they show the moon in one of the chakras, it is always relating so much to that particular element having an influence on earth. The moon is having so much influence on the earth in terms of its water flows, how water is flowing and all that. So if you're talking about space itself, right, a lot of things are happening. So for example, if you think about the human body, right, and the space element, there is a lot of relationship. Moon has a lot of influence on the earth. I have written a paper actually on how the moon should be declared as a living entity because of its relationship to the earth. There is a major influence in terms of tidal flows, in terms of the sap flow in the plant and all that. But still, we want to go mine the moon. I mean, look at our own body, right? For example, I think there is a particular element in the body. We are mining helium on the moon, right? So even minute quantities of what we do on the moon, you know, it relates to the human body and so on. They can have a major influence. So for example, methane. If you take methane, you know, it is even in minute quantities, if it is accumulating in the earth, it has a major influence. For example, I can tell you that even 0.00007, if methane goes to 0.0019, which has happened, it has a major influence, but we still want to go to the moon and exploit the moon for all its minerals and things like that, even a 1% exploitation could have a major impact on the earth. That is how much the moon has an influence on the earth. So phosphorus in the body, you could even have like 1% is phosphorus in the body. And even if some minor reductions of that could have a major influence on our body. So mining the moon could have major impact. That is the point I'm trying to make when it comes to the space element. So we are not relating these things. We are having 11 or 12 startups trying to mine the moon. We want to take out helium from the moon. Even a small impact in our body has such major impact on our health. Levels of phosphorus, when they go down, I mean, it could have a major impact. So all of these things actually need to be considered when we are talking about the moon itself. When I talk about space, there are two things we need to consider. So for example, in the Indian philosophy, we have Vastu Shastra, right? It is nothing but how are you managing the elements in a spatial phenomena. You know, when you build a house, you're bringing all of those elements together. How are you managing your space? That has an influence on the human body itself. And there have been a lot of papers written on it. So when you think of space, just don't think about extraterrestrial objects and things like that. Think about how spatial planning is also done on Earth. This has also a major influence. So all of these things need to be combined and looked at in a very holistic kind of a perspective so that it has a major impact. So the bottom line I'm trying to convey in this particular talk is that look at all of the elements very holistically. When we do economic planning, it has to be in a very holistic sense. All economic planning, every element interacts with every other element, and that is very important. So Indian knowledge systems have profound knowledge, and that is why I come back to the beginning of my talk, is if we focus our talk on Atma Bhumi Nirbhar Bharat, it changes our mindset completely, because it makes us think in an elemental fashion as opposed to be thinking just in terms of, I need to keep things clean. That's all I need to do. I think if we have planning based upon elements, on each of these elements, we will go a long way. And we will bring back our old knowledge systems of India back into life. Messaging is very important. Always, as I've said, messaging is key. Messaging is important. You can look at my paper on what we are doing. Why should we declare the moon as a living system? So everything in life is a living system. We have to view life as a living system. We have to view the moon as a living system. If we view the moon as a rock, we are not going to go anywhere. So look at my paper on moon as a living system, and I published this in SustainabilityNext, and you will get a lot of ideas. So basically, our planning, our economic planning should be based upon the Pancha Mahabhuta systems. And that is where we need to go. And this has a major influence on when we think about our planet in terms of the 5 elements and the Pancha Mahabhutas. That will solve a lot of the Indian problems. And that is why I am recommending not just Atma Nirbhar Bharat, but we should call it Atma Bhumi Nirbhar Bharat. So we focus on each of the elements in a proper way. And I have only touched the surface. I have not gone deep, but I just wanted to give you an idea. And I've almost published 50 articles on climate change, on how to address our Pancha Mahabhutas, And most of my articles are in SustainabilityNext and earth.org and things of that nature. So you can look at it. And as I said, we need an environmental health index along with GDP as a parallel, because we need to measure all the elements and we need a composite measure. And I've written a paper in earth.org about this. Unless we do this, we cannot progress and show ourselves as a model for the world. So with that, I will end my conversation and take any question from Mr. Debasis.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, I will just add one more question. Like you talked about moon, we have the legacy of knowledge system, civilizational knowledge system. We have scientifically evolved, but we also at the same time, with scientific view, we also see moon as a deity. Still, for thousands of years of colonization, we are regarded as the global south, but still we are a success story when it's come to the final frontier, the space legacy. But still, in nowadays, we can see the irresponsible countries like China. They are making irresponsible steps when it's come to space debris. So in that point of view, what is your view, sir, in this, what its implication for India's space ambition?
My view on this is moon and extraterrestrial objects should be only used for exploration purposes, not to use the moon as a colony, because the moon has a lot of influence on the human body. Even a woman's cycles are influenced by the moon. Moon has a lot of influence. I really encourage people to look at the 10 powerful reasons on why we should declare the moon as a living entity, which I published in SustainabilityNext. I've given very powerful reasons on why we should declare it as a living entity, because of its influence on Earth is just immense. Because everything happens in the night, nobody studies its phenomena. So we think we can go mine the moon, we can do whatever we want. Its impact on Earth, its impact on the human body, especially with the woman, especially the life on Earth. Every insect life we have not studied on how it is being influenced by the moon. A lot of nocturnal creatures are influenced by the moon. Human body is influenced by the moon. The sap flow. Plant growth happens in the night only. So all of these things, we don't study it and we just want to go exploit for mines and minerals. We want to get helium from the moon because we think that it can give a lot of energy and all on Earth. I think we are doing a dangerous mistake. We should declare it as a living entity because we should not interfere honestly with it. The more you interfere with the Pancha Mahabhutas, the more problems we have on Earth. And this is what my focus of my talk is. Don't exploit resources, but use resources wisely. Use the resources wisely so that they give you more productivity. I mean, I can assure you that if we have a sensible approach in this world, 300 million cattle, we are killing every single year. What if we took an approach which our Indian knowledge systems have taught us to respect them, right? And all of these cows and everything, if we respect them and only drink the excess milk or use the excess milk after the calf is completely fed, and not artificially inseminate them and keep on making production machine out of them, all of these things are going to hurt us. Environmentally, they're hurting us. I have told you the names of the people in my talk.
Sir. And as a layman, I can understand that there are a lot of research work has been done on this. Brilliant minds all over the world, including people like you, sir. And we just need to have the awareness, and maybe in that respect, the government need to intervene And we have the legacy of our knowledge systems, and we should implement them, and government should take a heed of it and make the dedicated ministries for, as you mentioned in your talk, for these Pancha Mahabhutas, for sustainability of these Pancha Mahabhutas. Is there
Yeah,
anything more, sir, you want to add?
the only powerful message which I request Government of India to do is to call it Atma Bhumi Nirbhar Bharat.
Right.
Because India can set an example for the world that we are the only country that are addressing all the 5 elements of this earth. Johann Rockström has basically said out of the 9 planetary boundaries, 6 of them have been breached. We have only 3 more left. Do we want to breach the remaining 3? Then it would be Noah's Ark you're calling about, right? What are you going to do? So we have reached a tipping point, and there is time to very narrow window to reverse ourselves. If we don't reverse ourselves, we can come out with all kinds of slogans, but India should take the leadership of calling it Atma Bhumi Nirbhar Bharat. That would be my only request, so that there is more focus on the Pancha Mahabhutas to make India work and show it as an example to the rest of the world when we are going through so much trouble.